The June 27th, 2024 Des Moines City Council meeting is now called to order. Councilmember Nunning will now lead us in the pledge. Please stand if you're able.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that all council members are present. Is there any correspondence not previously received by council? And yeah, I want to make you run.
No, Mayor.
Thank you. So now it's, do we have any public comment? Thank you. Now it's time for comments from the public. Please recognize that we ask that your comments stay respectful and recognize that anybody who's speaking or acting in a disruptive manner will be removed from the meeting. If you come to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and your city of residence. So up first, we have Marnie Savoris, but, oh, there she is. Hi, Marnie.
My name is Marnie Savoris. I live in Des Moines, just down and around the corner from here. I'm here, though, tonight to represent District 7 Little League. We support all of the leagues from West 520 down here to Des Moines. The kids right now are going through All-Stars, so every league has sent their best to play against each other for district. After they win district, they move on to the state tournament. And this year, District 7 is hosting the junior softball state tournament up at Stephen J. Underwood. It is July 8th through July 13th. Spent a lot of time trying to get fences so that our fields look absolutely beautiful up there, and I got fingers crossed that they're really going to be up. But what I'm here tonight to is let you know that I could really use some volunteers. We could use some scorekeeping volunteers, we could use announcers as volunteers, and we need people to help us sell concessions and 50-50 tickets. And so that's what I'm here for. At the district level, we don't really have, because we're supporting all the leagues, and the leagues are the ones that have the very large boards of their parents that are playing. At the district level, we don't really get that support. There are 3 women that are running the whole district. One of them just finished cancer treatment a couple of months ago, and other districts in the state are, you know, like 10, 15 people. So 3 women putting on a tournament up at Stephen J. Underwood. It'll be kids from all over the state. There's 8 teams participating with 15 kids, a team. We're over 100 participants. All their family, friends will be there. So I would appreciate any help. I will email you guys my information. I'm sure you see me on Facebook, Marnie Savoris, very uncommon last name. So please call me or email me, and there's a form you can fill out, or let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Marnie. Do you have an email address?
I do. It's my last name, Savoris, S-E-V-O-R-E-S, @comcast.net.
All right, thank you.
All right.
In your email, could you put, I saw the last email you sent. In your email, could you put the dates and the specific tasks you're looking for? Because I was just wondering.
Oh, I sure can.
It was sort of a blanket thing, and I didn't know which to respond to.
I can put more specifics in there. There's also, I had put on the community page, I filled out a form, so if you just click on it, it has each day, so it's Monday to Saturday,
and
and
what you need.
all the games are at 6 p.m.,
Okay.
except for Saturday. I need announcers, scorekeepers, and salespeople, concession people.
For each day.
Yep. We have 3 games Monday, 3 games Tuesday, 2 games Wednesday, Thursday, and a game Friday and a game Saturday.
Cool. I just wanted to know specifically
Yeah,
when to show up.
it's a lot. Yeah. I'll be there at 3 o'clock, Monday, July 8th.
Thank you, Marnie.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Raleigh Mupas. Is that how you say that?
I just signed in and didn't realize.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for doing that, and welcome. Thank you.
I belong
Did you want to make public comment tonight? Come up to the podium and state your name and what city you address.
Rogelio Mupas, MD. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist. I've been retired since I came to Des Moines, and I've been a member of Rotary for at least 40 years. Rotary Club is one, if not the #1 service club in the world, and I joined their services. My main function when I go is to join the medical missions, where I do at least 10 to 15 major surgeries per session that I go to the Philippines, which I normally go. I know a lot of other clubs do this, but I wish the council would reconsider the request of our club to decrease the rent of the park to, I think it's $7,000. Thank you very much. There will be a lot of people that will be helped by this one locally and internationally. Thank you very much, council members.
Thank you. Thank you for commenting tonight. Next up, I have Richard Mockler.
Good evening. I am Richard Mockler. I am the president-elect of the Des Moines Normandy Park Rotary Club and the current president of its newly revived foundation. I am a resident of Normandy Park, but am the co-owner of Marina Mercantile here in Des Moines. I want to say a little personal note first related to Rotary and specifically its work in Des Moines. I am also here, obviously, to speak, well, maybe not obviously, to speak in support of reducing the rent for this year's Blues and Brews Festival. When my wife and I came to Des Moines to start Marina Mercantile, we were very committed to being a part of the community and participating and giving back, and we spent a serious amount of time looking around at the best possible ways to engage here and do that. And Rotary, for me, rose to #1 in terms of the ability to make an impact here locally. And so this is a very personal thing for me as well. I think you have the facts of the matter there. I think Brian Schnur in his letter made clear that the funds from the Blues and Brews are a piece of the broader Rotary budget over the course of the year. And this club, and in coming year, the foundation, now that it's back in action, certainly provides more back into the community directly in Des Moines than we raise at Blues and Brews. And that is true if we were to do the accounting, whether it's the hard money we give to the food bank, or if we break out the money that we, for example, give the district that ends up at Mount Rainier. I mean, the club also gives innumerable volunteer hours, whether it's, again, to the food bank, to just about every civic activity in the city, to other clubs, to the Legacy Foundation, et cetera. So I would really urge you to consider that letter and that request from the club and from Brian. And I'd just make the, I guess, kind of obvious but important point that he was perhaps too subtle and kind to make, which is that the city does wonderful work too, including maintain that gorgeous park. But every dollar that we pay to the city in rent for that park is a dollar that we most certainly will not give or be able to give to a nonprofit in Des Moines. That's just math, and I think that would be a shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That's all that I have that have signed up. Is there anybody that came to the meeting tonight expecting or desiring to speak but did not know that they needed to sign up? All right, go ahead and come to the podium. State your name and where you're from.
My name is Russell Carlson. I've lived in Des Moines since 1964, a few years. I'm a member of the Lions Club as well as the Rotary Club, and I saw the increase in the cost to the club for you doing the Blues and Brews this year, and it stunned me. We are here as nonprofits. Every penny that we make in the Lions and the Rotary that comes from the community goes back into the community. And when our rates go up, it discourages us from new ideas, from new uses, from new programs that we could possibly use these facilities. I just want to say I'd like to see the cost of using Blues and Brews go down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else expect to want to give a public comment and did not realize that you needed to sign up in order to do that? Alina, so you didn't realize you needed to sign up?
I'm here. Hi, my name's Alina Rogers, and I live in Des Moines. And I'm here to follow up on what some of the consequences are in regards to the failures of your legal branch of your city, both your prosecutorial branch, your oversight department, and therefore it trickles down into your police department because they can only do the best they can with what they have, and what they have is inept. And so here are some of the consequences. Well, what I said last time, I was raped. I've never slept in my bed the same again. I don't put my head at the head of my bed. I sleep at the foot, even though I changed my rooms, I changed my everything. My son sleeps with a baseball bat, and he's caught fascination of weapons. And after all of this, one morning not that long ago, I saw him sitting on the couch, more dejected than I'd ever seen, just totally turned in on himself. And I said, "What's going on, bud?" And you know what he said to me? He cried tears, and I had taken him to the doctor before because I thought something was up with his tear ducts because they would well up. Fat tears down his face, curled in on himself. He said, "I feel useless because I haven't been able to stop him." Some of the other consequences have to go with the correspondence I sent to you, the Department of Justice's updated guidance to law enforcement and prosecutorial branches in the United States in regards to reducing bias and gender DV-related crimes. If you look at that, I believe I cited what page and paragraph to look at. This city has violated my civil rights. And not only that, because of the actions, the repeated failures of your actions, as cited in that document, you have increased my risk of harm. I sent correspondence tonight. My ex is still harassing me. He says in court filings that he overheard Prosecutor Jacob Gates lean to his defense attorney and say, "She's just totally abusing the system." Very interesting, since he's never met me, who persuaded him to feel that way? He never spoke to me. I never spoke to Mr. Gates until he called me less than 24 hours before my trial was supposed to start. You know what I think? I think a lot of your city administration, your legal branch, Jacob Gates, Tara Vaughn, Tim George, are abusing the system via absolute ineptitude and or corruption. And I'm going to be back every single week until you hear the rest of it. Did they follow up one time when Sergeant Penny told me all that false information, and then Sergeant Savage checked him, as she said, like I did last year? Yeah, but I'll tell you why I didn't trust to talk to a detective next time. Have a good night.
Thank you. And that closes up our public comment portion of the meeting tonight. Next up, we have committee chair reports, and it looks like both of the committees, the reports will be coming from Chair Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, tonight at 4 o'clock, Municipal Facilities Committee met. We received a rental facilities update, and we are $3,000 less in the rear than we thought, so that's a good thing. Next, we received an update on the beach park buildings, and there was new lighting installed around the picnic shelter and the buildings down there that are LED that can be changed, and for a fee, you can change them with your rental of that facility to the color of your liking. Also, received an update on the Founders Lodge and the possible partnership with Maritime High School and Highline School District, and possibly using that as a 2 or 3 classroom satellite site close to the water for the Maritime High. And then talked about the removal of the barn shed at Sanju Park and the possibilities of that. It's become a attractive nuisance, so to speak. So then last on the agenda was the marina paid parking. And from May till yesterday, Wednesday, we've had 34 cards sold to non-residents, 269 cards sold to residents. Reactivated cards from last year was 359 cards. So that's 662 cards activated. The revenue for the lane exit so far has been $35,282.50. Having a little bit of a challenge there with my numbers today. Total revenue for the last 24 days was just under 50 grand. So, and the facilities are working amazingly. One hiccup with some fiber, but that got all taken care of. And yeah, license plate readers working good, and everybody seems to be happy with it. So things are looking good. Next up was the Economic Development Committee meeting, and we talked about the comprehensive plan, namely chapters 5 and chapter 6. And basically chapter 6 was just the cut and paste of the checking my notes here, of the Parks and Rec and Open Space Element Plan. And there wasn't much to go. There was quite a few for the chapter 5 update, which was the capital facilities, utilities, and public service element. And Mayor Buxton made quite a few comments and changes to things. So more to come on that. And then there was a discussion on the noise code for new construction, and that's not the noise code for doing construction. It's the noise code for inside the building once the building's built. So what the sound transfer code basically on noise that can penetrate the walls and windows and ductwork. And so basically staff was directed to, in 2012, council repealed that code, which made it easier to build, spurred growth in the city for residential growth. And now staff has been directed to take a look at what Energy Codes has done for that sound transfer mitigation for airplanes, and what other we'll have the light rail coming through and that kind of stuff. So anyways, more to come on that, and I look forward to our next presentation whenever staff has the time to bring it to us in the committee. And that concludes my remarks. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Next up, we have the city manager's report. I'm going to hand that over to City Manager Tim George.
Great, thanks, Mayor. To start off, we have something that's not on the agenda, but we're going to get a presentation on our upcoming 4th of July celebration down at the beach park. So if I could get Courtney Wilt to come up. She is the city's events and facilities manager, and she's been handling all of the setup for the 4th.
Hello, I'm Courtney Wiltz, work down at the beach park. This year's 4th of July, we will be doing drones again. We have 200 drones that will be bigger and brighter than last year. We have 18 patriotic images that both myself and Bonnie have picked out, so we're excited about that. We do have entertainment. We have 3 bands and 1 walking musician. We also have a maker's market that we will have. We have about 6 vendors right now. We also have 7 food trucks that will be here, both in the marina and at the beach park. Destination Des Moines will also be doing a beer garden. And the entertainment starts at 5 o'clock and drones at 10:15 for 15 minutes. The drones will be linked to music this year that will be broadcasted both in the marina parking lot and the beach park. So, yeah. questions? Yes.
Councilman Pierce.
Hi,
Hi.
when did you start?
I've been with the city 3 years. I've been the facility, let's see what my title is, events and facilities
That was my
manager
second
for about 6 to 7 months now.
Welcome,
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, so this will be, we tried to learn from last year, and we shortened the event, made it later in the day, but then, we're adding to it with more food trucks, more music, so should be a really good experience. And the weather for now looks good. A lot can change, but it looks sunny as of the moment. Our next item is our finance director, Jeff Friend, and he'll be giving a first quarter financial update.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, members of the public. This is the financial update for the first quarter. It'll be brief because it's only 3 months that we're talking about. We have numbers, of course, as we do in every financial report, but we're also going to, I'll comment on just kind of what we're seeing in the first quarter that are trends that we're kind of looking at for this year, which is kind of mostly a takeaway that you get for a first quarter report. Overall, our revenue budget for the year is a little over $26.6 million. This chart shows the dark sections of the column on the bottom are the actuals for the first quarter, and then the lighter green above them is the remaining budget that we have for the rest of the year. So revenue in the first quarter was $5,472,000. Expenditures were $5,752,000, which is about a $280,000 loss. However, you have to keep in mind in the first quarter we do not receive property tax. So even though that's a loss, I kind of felt like, well, that's a little encouraging that even without property tax, that it was, a smallish loss. Looking at the general fund revenue categories, usually we go through what each of these with a slide of their own, but for tonight we have all of them in a graph on one slide. So property tax, as I mentioned, we really don't receive the majority of our property tax in the first quarter. It comes in April and October in the second and fourth quarters. In the meantime, we do get stragglers that come in, so that's those little amounts there. So the blue bar on the left in each category is the budget. The yellow in the middle, that's the previous year, 2023, at the end of the first quarter. And then the green bar is 2024 first quarter. So you can see property tax is just a smidge above where it was last year at this time. Utility taxes a little bit above, where we finished the first quarter last year, and also above budget. Sales tax is down a little bit from last year, and this is regular sales tax. It does not include the one-time sales tax from construction projects valued at $15 million or more. It also came in a little bit under budget. B&O taxes, the opposite. That one's up from the year before. Franchise fees are down. Red light running is down. So the takeaways here, especially in regards to sales tax, I had mentioned one-time sales tax. We're seeing probably across the county sales tax flattening, not really growing from the previous year. And in fact, the Federal Way Finance Director sent out a finance director email blast to a bunch of finance directors asking are you seeing what we're seeing? Is your sales tax flattening? And everybody responded, yes, we're seeing the same thing. So what's really happening, though, is some categories are growing, but construction sales tax is down 6% countywide. And also with one-time sales tax, those not on the graph, as I mentioned, that's what we received from construction projects valued at $15 million or more. We've had 2 of those projects that are pretty much now complete, but I've been told maybe we have a couple more on the horizon in the near future, maybe next year or afterwards. So for 2024, we're probably not going to see much one-time sales tax, but the regular sales tax, as I said, is doing okay aside from the construction category, but it is flattening out, not really growing from the previous year. Red light running also is one where the city tends to expect 1.2 million is kind of a plateau. As we saw in the fourth quarter, that is decreasing, and so I think we're at a place where behavior is still improving as far as people driving through red lights, and so we're going to probably be at the 1.1 million level more than the 1.2 million level for a bit. This is a chart showing sales tax by month. The city collects sales tax 2 months after we earn it. So if you look at the month of February and you see for each year that kind of spikes up a little bit, because that's when we collect the sales tax from December and the Christmas time. So these lines are each year. So 2021 is the blue line, 2022 is yellow, 2023 is green. So that would be last year, and then the dark orange is this year. So you can see it's following the same pattern. We're not as strong as we were in 2021, but we're better than 2022. But you can tell in March we dipped below the green line, and so that's why I say, quarter to quarter is kind of flattening out. General fund expenditures. The categories we have for general fund expenditures, we have personnel expense, supplies, services, internal services, capital, and transfers out. We really don't have any capital expenses in the general fund. Transfers out is basically, that is a debt payment for the 2018 bonds. But you can see personnel makes up a majority of the expenditures for the general fund. The blue budget line shows the budget through the first quarter. 2024, first quarter, about almost 3.6 million was expended on personnel expense, which is a bit up from 2023, which was nearly 3.5. So pretty close, but a little bit higher than the previous year. Supplies, not a big expense, a little bit higher than the year before. Services, the same story. It's at budget through the first quarter, but a little bit higher than it was in this time in the prior year. You can see it's about 1.5 million this year compared to almost 1.4 last year. Internal services is funds that is sent out to, say, the fleet fund and other funds that provide services for the government. So some general fund money do go to those funds, and that's just a budget item, so that's why you can see that it's very close to budget. Cash and investments. At March 31st, the city's cash and investments equals $71,138,517. You can see 39% of that is invested in bonds. The local government investment pool has 56.3% at just a little over 40 million. That is because you can see on the schedule above in the activity column there, you can see LGIP goes up by like $23.5 million. That's us moving the bond proceeds out of KeyBank, where you can see the larger negative above, into the LGIP so it can earn more interest. And then KeyBank account, as you can see, at the beginning of the year, it had $31 million, is down to $3 million. And again, that's because we moved the bond proceeds from KeyBank into the local government investment pool. Last time we discussed that in the last meeting, I made the point that, yeah, the city has $71 million. However, not all of that's in the general fund. And so this schedule shows the different kinds of funds that the city has. So there's the general fund, which is for the general, day-to-day operations. So police are paid out of the general fund, parks, finance, human resources, city manager. So all the day-to-day operations are paid out of the general fund. Special revenue funds are like lodging taxes that have special purpose. Debt service funds is where we pay bonds from. Capital projects is where all the accounting for the capital projects are done. Enterprise funds is the marina and swim. So those are businesses that are expected to be self-sustaining. Then, as I mentioned, internal service, and then custodial is like state money that belongs to them. It's not really our money, but we do have the cash on hand. And the reason I want to bring this up is you see the unrestricted amount of $1.629 million. So that's all, of that 71 million, that's the only portion that's unrestricted, and that's in the general fund. And of the 71 million, only 2 million is in the general fund. So even though we might have debt proceeds from the bonds, those are, as you can see, in the capital project funds and enterprise funds. And the general fund has nothing to do with that. So the general fund does not make debt payments on the 2023 bonds. The marina does, and the capital projects funds do. So I know it's come up in discussion, but I just want to make that clear, that this is what resources the general fund has, and it has nothing to do with the rest of those funds, and does not have access to the rest of that cash. The only time the general fund receives money from, say, the marina or those other funds is when the general fund provides services and those funds pay for them. Maturities, as far as the bond investments that the city has, we had one bond to mature. It was yielding only 0.62% for $1.5 million. We rolled that into another bond that matures in 2027 that yields 4.38%, so that's an improvement. Just notes on some other funds. ARPA, we were awarded $9,029,879. Expended through the end of March was $5,782,900. And then the remaining funds are $3,246,979. And the expended funds, of course, are expended on projects that were approved by council when we received the ARPA grant. This chart shows the continuing projects. So these are the continuing active projects. As you can see, as we noted last time, I gave a report on police officers, and see there's the mental health support, so that is the crisis response specialist for the police. So we continue to pay them, and those should be expired or completed by the end of the year. Some other projects, such as the tenant restroom, where bids have come in too high, we might have to repurpose those funds. Additional traffic calming, we haven't used any of those. So we expect in the near future to come to council with recommendations for redirecting some of the ARPA funds. And the reason we would do that in 2024 is these dollars need to be committed in contract by the end of 2024, or we lose those funds. And the last slide tonight, and on a good note, is on real estate excise tax. Real estate excise tax, these are funds that are received by capital project funds. They are not part of the general fund. And as I mentioned, the email from the Federal Way Finance Director, one of the things that he had commented, and others had as well, were that their REIT was down a lot. And I was probably one of the only ones to respond like, actually ours is up. So 2023, at the end of the first quarter last year, the taxable selling price of homes that have sold, or properties that have sold in Des Moines, was nearly 37 million. There were 69 transactions, and we collected about 183,000 from King County. And then, of course, it did decline last year and was concerning as mortgage rates went up. This year, in 2024, the taxable selling prices was almost 49 million. There are 79 transactions, or 78 transactions, and King County, we've collected $242,765. So I like to end on a good, positive note, And that's the conclusion of my presentation. If there's any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Mahoney?
On the ARPA dollars, I know that you plan to spend approximately what, if you were to give a rough number today about repurposing, what would that number be?
I would think it's in the neighborhood, because there's that 400,000 from the tenant restroom, and I think there might be a couple $100,000 more, so it might be about 600,000, at least, I think. I'll be working on it tomorrow, so I'll have a better idea tomorrow.
Yeah, that's in the general ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's all I'm looking for. We've had previous discussions, kind of gone up and down, but that was kind of the number I had in mind. Thank you.
Councilmember Oxiger.
Yes, thank you for the report. I'm wondering, you have listed under the general fund revenue category red light running. Is that going to include the money for the speed cameras in Redondo? Or will you be putting that in separately?
Right, so the red light running is the red light cameras, I think at Midway and at 216th at least. The Redondo cameras have their own fund, separate fund, so it won't be included in the general fund.
Okay.
Unless they're reimbursing a related cost.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always impressed you never fail to mention contact with other cities and their finance directors. And I was wondering, you know, like the state has this gizmo where you can compare financial data from cities, and it never seems to match like what I see on, you know, the reporting we get, and it doesn't match other cities. And then there are all these other websites where you can get similar stuff, and those numbers don't match. So my point is there any source that, you know, you think is trustworthy in doing like sort of apples to apples between cities?
What are you trying to match, I guess is my question.
Well, just everything, you know, anything from just property tax, REIT, you name it, and the numbers that you would get from that state tool, they'll be different from what, you know, we discuss here or what other cities do. And then, like, there are all these other sites you can go to, too. And they're all just different. So I'm just wondering what numbers, is there a way that just, you know, an average schlep such as myself could just, something you would trust?
Well, I think you ruled out the one that I would suggest, which is the FIT tool on the state website, which I think is on the SAO, the State Auditor's Office website.
Yeah.
So, because that tool pulls from all the financial statements for each city, but each city, of course, is different. So, I mean, that's why I'm wondering what you're trying to match up.
Yeah, no, I go and look at it, and it just doesn't, I look at it, and the numbers are different from what we discuss here often at times, and so I'm always curious about it, if there's just.
That tool is the tool the legislature also uses. So I mean, and it's been based on audited numbers.
Okay.
So I guess that's my response, is that's the best I would know.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Next up, we have consent. So could the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, senior services advisory appointment. Item 3, Parametrics task assignment 2024 NPDES support. Item 4, draft resolution 24-048, setting a date for public hearing for street vacation of First Place South. Item 5, right-of-way dedication, Salvatore Properties, or property. And that concludes the consent agenda, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the consent calendar as read, Mayor.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Mahoney has a second. Is there an item that any council member wishes to pull? Okay, fantastic. So we'll take a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. 7-0, unanimous. Fantastic. All right. Next up, we have unfinished business. And I was going to call on you. Okay. I just wanted to make a note here that, you know, there are going to be interesting discussions tonight, and in the end, no matter what's discussed, there are going to be good things that are going to come to the community. So just I want to cap it with that before we even begin. So the first item is our alleyway naming project. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the council with an opportunity to name the alley behind the theater. So I want to offer a few opening remarks before we begin. It was a great experience coming to this point. the council commissioned our Citizens Advisory Committee with the task of making 3 recommendations for consideration. And on June 6th, we received a fabulous presentation. We deliberated and forwarded the decision to a second discussion, which is going to be tonight. Our CAC, I want to comment that I really appreciated their work as their first big project as a group. I appreciated their input, and the recommendations that we'll be discussing tonight, all 3 of them really struck a chord with different council members. So in an unusual move for taking recommendations from an advisory body, we are going to be deliberating on all three recommendations, which, you know, moving forward, that probably almost never happens from an advisory body to a council. So moving forward, you know, this will be an unusual event that we would, I mean, there will be sometimes that an advisory body will make recommendation that a council won't take at all. So just want to say thanks, good recommendations. So their 3 options are Backstage Alley, Waterland Way, and Jack's Alley. So we are going to begin, of these 3 options, we're going to begin with a choice for the alley, and then depending on the vote, we're going to continue discussing the other options. So because the options that we have on the table here have already been considered and deliberated a bit, I'm just going to begin with opening with a motion. So do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yes, I move to select Backstage Alley as the new name for the Marina District alleyway and direct the staff to prepare an ordinance to formally implement this decision.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Nutting for the second. And we'll begin with discussion. Go ahead, opening Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier that Backstage Alley reflects what the presence of the new theater is. It's a way to convey that to the public, that it might be an interesting place to visit Backstage. It comports with all the ideas of economic development that we're wanting to do because it ties that piece in. All of the other suggested names are good. There are good reasons for them. They're made out of you know, the kindness of people's hearts in the case of Jack. The use of Waterland Way eventually, you know, because we're the Waterland city. But I think there are ways to accommodate those. But I think if we're going to get specific to the alleyway behind the theater, it's appropriate to name it in conjunction with that theater, and that would be Backstage Alley. And I think that's what best fits what the vision is for the alley. I think that's what best fits the location of the alley, and I think that is what best fits the desires of most people. And, you know, from the CAC perspective, most of the neighborhoods supported that. I mean, it was in every single neighborhood suggestion. So it really carried through as 1, 2, or 3. And so I do think there's a lot of support for Backstage. I know I've received quite a bit of public comment from people, and I really do think it's the best choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahoney.
I've always, as I said last time, I favor Waterland Way. Reason is we are the Waterland city. We don't really have anything other than the arcade named Waterland. But in discussing with my colleagues, I actually would like to offer a friendly amendment because I think Waterland Way is something that could be useful. I will support, so my motion is to not only call the alleyway Backstage Alley, but in conjunction with that, anything west of Marine View Drive down to Cliff Avenue, get an honorary name, so we don't have to change addresses and so forth, to Waterland Way. And then also Jack's was an issue, and I say in conjunction with it, and we also champion the idea that the community comes up with a fundraiser for a bench that would be at somewhere located that's feasible at the intersection of Waterland Way and Backstage Alley that would have Jack Kelsey's name on it. And so that's my motion.
So,
Friendly amendment to the motion.
so Councilmember Mahoney, are you making, that's an extensive amendment to this
Correct.
So just an offering of advice, or to this offering, if you include the situation with the bench, we do have a program already, and depending on how that action might be carried out, that would not even require an action or decision from city council.
So
So,
Just a point of
and-
clarification on the friendly amendment first before we
yes,
go down that road.
yeah,
There are three now separate items. This is what the friendly amendment would do. Are we even capable of addressing all three of those in one motion, or do they need to be separate motions?
So, yeah, I think we're trying to move away from the friendly amendments. I think what we had talked about previously is that when a motion is made and seconded, it becomes the council's motion. And so the council would then have to vote to amend the motion. So I guess for the sake of clarity, if we could kind of separate these three out, if that would work, Councilmember Mahoney, or would you?
So, yeah, the only clarification is if I'm gonna support Backstage Alley, I need the assurance that the Waterland Way motion will be supported as well. So how do we go about that?
You could make a motion then to amend the motion, but that would then need to be seconded and voted on by the council instead of the friendly amendment piece. But regarding the bench, that sounds like maybe that's independent, so could we leave that?
It would be, my recommendation is it's encouraged from the council for the public to generate a fundraiser for the bench.
I would like that to be a separate discussion from this motion.
And that's
It's a
okay.
friendly amendment to my motion. I should be responding to that point. I am happy to support renaming Waterland Way as a separate motion, and you have my assurances that I will support that. I think we should separate out all three of these, and I'm generally very supportive of all three of these, but I think they need to be separated just for the sake of clarity. And I think we can move through 1, 2, and 3 more quickly than we would otherwise.
With that assurance,
I would
I'll
not-
withdraw my friendly motion, and we can proceed with the original motion.
All right. Any other comments? Councilmember Harris.
So regarding the ceremonial renaming, are there any legalities involved in doing that sort of thing?
There are, and we can discuss that, but I think the motion that's on the table now is just strictly related to the naming of the alleyway.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, so we're not considering any amendment to the original motion at this moment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the original motion? Okay, I just wanted to add, very similar to Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, it's the Backstage Alley seems appropriate to the brand and location, and it's a sustainable application over a period of years, decades, 100 years. It would still be applicable to the vibe, for lack of a better term, that we're creating down in that little area. And the name also invites the dynamic that we're trying to build as a destination for the arts, recreation, and entertainment in our downtown corridor. So, apropos. Anyway, with that, did you have another comment? Or okay, Councilmember Harris for your second time.
So, Jack's is obviously the correct way to go, but I am deeply impressed by my colleagues' ability to achieve comity here, and so I will support Backstage. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. All in favor, raise your right hand. Backstage Alley. Looks like it's a 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the second offering of Waterland Way, and I would like to, like the previous item, open for a motion. Councilmember Mahoney.
I move to honorarily name the section west of Marine View Drive, all the way down to the beginning of Cliff Avenue, or the Overlook Park, an honorary name as Waterland Way.
Do I have a second?
Well, that's a point of clarification. The renaming, or honorary name of 223rd
Correct, my apologies. 223rd being renamed from Marine View Drive to Overlook Park or Cliff Avenue intersection. As an honorary name, and only. Just, and the example would be in the clarification where Mount Rainier High School got the Mount Rainier street named after him as an honorary function because of the difficulties of changing addresses and so forth. And but it had clarification and names both in the sites. I thought that was a great compromise several years ago, and I'm suggesting similar now.
So before we take a second, Councilmember Honey, I would like to recommend that the motion say, I move to direct staff to prepare the necessary materials in order to commemorate the name of Waterland Way for 223rd Street between
I second that.
Backstage Alley and Marine View Drive. I think it's smartest.
Yeah.
Move to direct staff to prepare the materials.
I guess what I'll say is that when we did the commemorative naming for Rainier Street or Drive or whatever, we did that through a resolution. Obviously, we don't have a resolution prepared tonight, so I would ask that the motion be that staff returns with a drafted resolution to change that name, because I think without it, we can't really do it.
Well, so the only thing I would ask is if I can, and I don't know if we can do it. I need a little bit more assurance that this will succeed. That's kind of what I'm after here.
Is there a way to vote for it without the resolution?
Can't we put it on new items for consideration, and we get
that's
3
kind of what
votes? And then, yeah, okay, but I mean,
Yeah,
just
so, I mean, we
come
need to
back with the language and the possibilities
Can we
and
vote that it can
constraints.
happen and then the staff brings forward the,
Direct the staff to bring back resolution.
but that means that we have to have a vote again on the resolution. He wants a guarantee that it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a resolution drafted. so-
Okay. Councilmember Grace Matsui.
I think this is a more appropriate item to go to new items for consideration, since it was not on the agenda and no one has had a chance to prepare any discussion points about this honorary name being added. And so I would prefer that we take a vote, see if you have 3 votes, then it would go forward to the staff's naming. The assurance is the vote. And if you have the votes, that's how it goes forward.
Councilmember Mahoney.
I'm okay with the direction to staff and get the business done and move on, and then that can be discussed at a later time with everybody having better preparation.
So you're
So,
saying you're okay with directing
As your amended motion was.
Okay, and so I do need, here, I'm going to repeat the motion. I move to direct staff to prepare the necessary materials in order to create the commemorative name of Waterland Way for 223rd Street between Marine View Drive and 5th Avenue South.
It's actually Cliff Avenue.
Is it Cliff Avenue? Okay. Between Marine View Drive and Cliff Avenue. That is the motion. Do I have a second?
I second it, and I also want to make an assurance that I will support it when it comes back before council.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any comments, any discussion on Waterland Way with this motion? My comment is I will definitely support it when it comes back. So, all right, all in favor, raise your right hand. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Mahoney, Councilmember Harris, and myself. All opposed. Councilmember Grace Matsui, 6-1. All right. So that is Backstage Alley and Waterland Way. Now we do have a discussion in regard to Jack Kelsey. So what we recognize through this process that we've been through, that we have a beloved community member, more beloved than I think we realized. Someone who brought laughter, fascinating conversation, and a ray of sunshine to countless community members and visitors. I saw him today. He's quite fondly thought of, and he no longer lives in the community, but we recognize a deep desire to have him remembered well. So with that in mind, and now here to, I do want to recognize Councilmember Grace Matsui's point. I did give a heads up about some of these items, but with that in mind, a few ideas have been considered by council, and I'm going to offer up a discussion in regard to this. But before discussion, I'd like to offer a bit of information before we discuss this item. The city has a commemorative bench program. Any citizen or group in memory of or honoring someone who is still with us can be honored with a bench in the city. And the only thing you have to do is raise the funds and then work with the city about an appropriate location. Jack is still with us. He doesn't live in Des Moines, though. He lives in Burien. But the city commemorative bench program, the funds, you would need to collaborate with the city. The city manager, do you have any additional comments to that program, city manager?
No, I think that summed it up well. Yeah, the city has a bench program, and anyone can contact us about having a bench installed, and we help find a place, and they pay for the plaque.
Okay, and so this option is, I'm making it public, but it's not subject to a vote of the council. It's not a council action. One other point, another program that the city offers through council decision is a Spirit of Des Moines Award. It's designed to honor citizens who keeping or enhancing the things that make the city of Des Moines special to us. It has been well established that Jack is that. So the council does have the option to honor Jack with the Spirit of Des Moines Award. Now, before entertaining a motion, what I want to do in this discussion is make sure that any other desires or recommendations in regard to Jack come out to the table before we entertain a motion. So does anybody have any other recommendations about honoring this suggestion that came to us through the CAC? All right. So I will open for discussion in regard to the recommendations of what to do with Jack and the information that I just offered. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, as a non-exclusive motion, I would move, I think I nominate Jack for a Spirit of Des Moines Awards at this point, rather than go directly to that point, so there is at least a little bit of consideration. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we have a process with committee that would do that. I think the deputy mayor actually runs that, so. I'd have to look at the rules.
Looking good for Jack right now.
Yeah, it's been a couple years, but it is in the protocol manual, so we can look at that.
And I would nominate Jack for that award and refer it to the committee on the Spirit of Des Moines Award.
All right. Do we need to have a motion and a second on this, Tim? Or do we just say because that's the responsibility of the deputy mayor?
Yeah,
Or-
I think you could just have the deputy mayor do that.
Okay, I am going to take additional discussion and comments though, however. Anybody else have a comment or addition to this discussion? Councilmember Mahoney.
I think that's fine. Taking it to the Spirit of Des Moines Committee, as they have in the past, with the deputy mayor facilitating that with a group of representatives from the community, is a great way to work through that and then come back, because they may be considering other names as well.
Okay, so it looks like, and I'm in favor of that. Anybody else? So it looks like with the agreement of 3 council members from the dais, that can be referred to the committee with the supervision of the deputy mayor. Right? Okay. Looks like that's all good. And just to be clear, in regard to the bench discussion, if anybody wants to take that up, this is my personal comment, I would be in favor of that and be supportive of it. So you can contact me if somebody decides to do that. All right. That was item number 3. Thank you so much for the conversation. Item number 4, city manager recruitment. I'll invite up the assistant city manager, AJ Johnson-Newton.
Good evening, council. staff, community members. My name is AJ Johnson-Newton, and I am the Assistant City Manager. And I'm here to provide an update on the city manager recruitment process. So tonight, we're going to talk about the semifinalist selection process that the council will be engaged in next Tuesday on July 2nd. Next slide, please. So just to recap what the council has done to bring us to this point, it's actually quite a bit of work, which you guys are well aware of. We secured the executive search firm, which is SGR. You guys worked through the updated city manager job description. You worked through a new salary schedule and methodology. You participated in the listening sessions with the consultant. You guys provided input that later became the city manager recruitment brochure. And then the job posting went live on May 30th, 2024, and we've just been waiting. So next slide, please. So as of today, at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time, we have 20 candidates that's applied. So that's 8 more than we had on Friday. So that's really great. 12 are in state, 8 are out of state, and we're aware of 2 potential candidates that may apply before the deadline of June 30th. That's when the posting will close. The other comment that I'll make is that in our experience on the recruitment side, that people do tend to wait until the last day. So it's so it's quite possible that that number, we may go up maybe 3 or 4 more candidates. But even with 20, it's a pretty good pool. I'm pretty happy about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's what you guys can expect. So the semifinalist selection is going to go as this. So you guys will be provided an overview of the search process, the outreach that was conducted, and then the number and demographics of candidates, and that will be provided by the consultant. You'll be provided a summary of the candidates and their qualifications. One thing that I want to note is that we will not have any paper materials. So this will be provided via Zoom. And so when the candidates are presented to the council, they'll be organized in the following fashion. There's 3 tiers, and the first tier will be anyone that exceeds the qualifications listed in the job description and advertisement. So those would be your guys' desired and preferred, right? Along with the min quals or minimum qualifications. Tier B will be people that just meet the minimum qualifications, so the baseline, which means they're qualified for the job, at least according to their materials, but they may not have the desired or the preferred qualifications that you guys listed. And then tier C means does not meet qualifications. Okay. And then after the candidates are presented to you, you guys will be evaluating them according to a very simple system. It's I'm interested in advancing the candidate to a semifinalist, it should be staged. I might be interested in advancing candidate to semifinalist, and I'm not interested in advancing candidate to semifinalist stage. So those will just be your 3 evaluations that you'll do. You can choose up to 12 semifinalists from the group. And then at that point, the only other thing that the council will need to do in preparation for next week is that you'll need to select 4 of the online interview questions that from the SGR standard online interview questions by July 1st. So next slide, and I'll explain this a little bit better. So if you guys recall, and I'll talk about this more in the slide, the semifinalists will be required to record themselves answering questions. And so SGR has this standard list that they have provided us, and so that you guys will need to select 4 of the questions from that list. So that's not something that you'll need to do tonight. Tomorrow I'll send out an email, and I also have paper copies if you guys want to pick those up tonight. I can put them in your box that have the questions listed. And so what I'll need you guys to do is select your 4 and send those back to me by July 1st. That'll just save us some time once we get to the meeting on July 2nd. Because one of the things that me and the consultant discussed is that it would be very helpful if the council could make their decision on July 2nd, because you won't really have materials to take away, right? So, we'll be rolling up our sleeves, or you guys will be in that session figuring out who it is that you want to advance. So any work that we can do in advance of July 2nd, I think will be helpful for us. Next slide, please. Okay. So after you select the semifinalists, here's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to respond to 20 supplemental questions from SGR City Manager Candidate Questionnaire, and it's pretty in-depth. I will provide you guys a copy of that. I would ask that you don't share, because you don't want to give anyone a leg up on the questions that we were going to be asking the candidates to complete. And then, of course, they'll be asked to record a one-way semifinalist interview from those 4 questions or from the list of questions that I just showed you previously. They'll be given about 2 weeks to return their responses, And then during this process, SGR will be performing what they call a stage 1 media search. And so that language in there I just took directly from the RFP. But essentially, they go and review through this nexus diligence of, that allows them access to see if the people's name have come up in any sort of news article that they may not have disclosed to the recruiter. And then if there's any red flags or noteworthy media coverage, they will notify us at the end of the 2-week period. Next slide, please. So if you recall, when Dave Twan came, you guys, we adopted a tentative recruitment schedule. There's been a little bit of a shift to that, primarily because the posting went up later than what we had originally proposed. But like I said last time I was up here, given that we had 20 candidates, I feel like it was well worth the delay. And I hope the council feels that way too when we see the actual candidates. The major change now, due to the fact that we posted a little bit later than we had hoped, is that it moves the proposed week for on-site interviews of the finalists to starting on Wednesday, August 28th, 2024, rather than Monday, August 12th. Now, as we go through this process, that may shift again because I think Labor Day weekend's the following weekend, and Wednesday may not be a good time to start interviews, but it's just something to keep in mind as we move forward, and you guys are thinking about your schedules as well. And the other thing I wanted to give the council a heads up is that you should be prepared that we're going to have another executive session the week of July 22nd. We do have a meeting, so we can potentially do it on the July 25th, I think is the date. And that will be the day that you guys will get all of the responses back from the semifinalists you selected, so the written responses and the online interviews, and we'll actually have paper copies then. So, and at that meeting is when you guys will take probably, depending on how many of our semifinalists you guys review, that's where you're going to make your first cut down to your finalists. In other words, who do you want to come on site? So we've been, the HR team has been playing around with the schedule. We think we could do up to 4. We could make 5 work if we were going to have a late day. So just for something for the council to keep in mind. Next slide, please. Okay. So next steps, just to recap. So tomorrow or tonight, if you want a paper copy, again, I'll put these in your guys' boxes. The city manager job description will be in your packet, the city manager brochure. And really the focus of that is to go review the min-quals because that's going to tie back to how the consultant organized the candidates in Tier A, Tier B, Tier C. So, and then a copy of the supplemental questions, those 20 questions that I mentioned earlier. And then the online interview questions, which is your homework assignment. I need you guys again to select 4 of the questions from that list and then email me your top 4 back by Monday the 1st. And at that point, now we just get ready to meet with the consultant on Tuesday. Is there any questions?
Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I don't recall hearing about limiting our selection to 4 questions. Where did that come from out of this list?
So, yeah, we wouldn't have heard of it because it was in the overview. So they mentioned that they would do that online self-recorded interview piece. When I talked to the consultant this week, that's when he provided me the list of questions. So it's a controlled interview list of questions that they use for what they call a one-way interview.
So these 4 questions would be the online interview?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's totally different from the questions that we'll be asking when the finalists come on board. This will just be, and I'm not quite sure how it works, but I'm assuming they probably have the finalists would have the 4 questions up somewhere, and they'd be recording themselves responding to the questions. So no one's going to ask them the questions, right? And so that recording will be provided to the consultant, which will end back up with the council.
And then the one other thing is why would we bother even looking at Tier C? If they don't meet the qualifications, they shouldn't be there. And let's cut it if that's a way to make the cut. So we're not considering as many. That would make sense to me. I'm not sure why we'd spend time doing people that don't meet the minimum qualifications.
I normally like to see if someone else is making reviewing the applications and making the cut, I at least like to review the work that they're doing, just to make sure that you agree with the people that essentially they're saying doesn't meet the min-quals. So that would be my recommendation, to at least review them, because, you know, people are not turning in applications, they're turning in resumes and cover letters. And so I just want to make sure, and I think the council should also make sure, that the consultant's interpretation of who met the min-quals matches what you guys would also agree with. I just think it's a good practice when you don't have the control of the selection process.
I get it. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you very much. This is actually more for my colleagues. Is there openness to adding a question to this list? Because what is coming to mind is actually from former Mayor Matt Pina, who had a standard question both for council member appointees and also in the 2016 process. So with that bait, are we open to adding an item, or are we happy with this list?
Anybody have a comment?
As far as I'm concerned, that would be a question that you could ask when we interview them, and you're able to ask questions. So I don't think that there's a need to add another question to the list, is my comment.
Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, you had your hand raised.
Considering it in a vacuum, I don't know if I'd be open to adding another question, or if I thought it was redundant. So you're asking something.
May I give you the question then?
If you'd like to do it that way.
Very good. Okay, so when Councilmember Nutting was appointed, Mayor Pina, and also at the city manager selection, Mayor Pina asked, he said, although it may not look like it on the dais, we in fact often have strong disagreements. If you are appointed to this position, how would you manage those situations? And I thought that was a stellar question to ask anyone getting involved in this. And I don't see anything really similar to it on this list, so.
So let me clarify about that list, is you're going to be tasked with choosing your 4 favorites. So it doesn't matter if there's 20 or 40 on there. AJ's going to be, it's kind of like that colored dot exercise that you do sometimes in person. So she's going to send us this list, and we're all going to send her our 4 favorites, and then she's going to just take the top 4 choices, correct? Yeah. So I'm fine adding another one there. If nobody likes it, then you don't have to send that to AJ. So Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I'm fine adding it to the list.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. So do you have that, AJ? Do you need that?
Yeah, and just to respond to you, Councilmember Harris, one of the things that I did talk to Dave about is that there is some flexibility in the city manager questionnaire, because there's 20 questions. And so, you know, once you review those, you may find that you prefer to actually either add that in the supplemental questionnaire or replace one of the questions that is already in there. So we certainly have the ability to add questions. Maybe you just may need to decide if you want to answer it on camera or if you want a written response. But I think there's room for the council to weigh in on, probably the supplemental may be better, but, you know, whatever the council decides.
To me, that's, you know, one of those open-ended questions. If I were interviewing somebody, it would be telling to me how they think on their feet, answering a question like that. So I appreciate it.
Do you want him to submit that to you, AJ?
Yeah, because I didn't write it down. I apologize.
No, I remember it like word for word. It was just really because he used it several times.
So if you could do that right away, because she's going to be sending that list to us tomorrow, right?
Yeah, so again, I will email you guys, but I will also put in paper copies in your box so you can start your homework early if you want.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay, AJ, thank you. Exciting. All right. The next item of business is new business. And the first item on this is a rate reduction request that we received from Rotary with regard to the Poverty Bay Blues and Brews Festival. So I'm going to pass that over to City Manager Tim George.
Thank you, Mayor. And we're bringing this forward because it's outside of the authority of city staff to make this decision. It's something that the council needs to make. The city council has an adopted policy. It's a resolution that provides discounts for nonprofits and residents on event facility rentals. Organizations can always request additional discounts from the city council, and that's what Rotary has done. So we've provided the rate reduction request, which details the basis for their request. Just a little bit of background, the adopted council resolution that provides discounts provides for a 20% discount, a 60% discount, a 75% discount based on specific parameters. When we applied those based on the time of year and based on how the revenue is spent from this event, the Rotary Club under the adopted policy would receive a 20% discount. The rate reduction request seeks a 75% discount as well as a waiver of parking fees for event attendees. Administration does not have a recommendation. We left that blank in the motion, and that concludes the presentation so that council can make a decision on this.
Before I entertain a motion, any questions for the city manager? Okay, so, oh, you do? Sorry, thank you. Councilmember Grace Matsui.
Thank you. I'm looking at the request for fee reduction, and it does say at the 75% level. Can you explain to me why they don't automatically qualify for that reduction?
Yeah, so in the resolution, which was also attached, it states that I'm just going to summarize here, but that the event, that 100% of the net revenues from the event be spent, that those actually go right back into the city, into city events and functions like that, right? And so the report that Rotary provided shows that they also fund programs, nonprofits that are outside of the city, international, at the state level outside of the city. So under the resolution, 100% of their revenue is not spent right back into the city. So that's why they wouldn't qualify for that 75% reduction.
Councilmember Grace.
Further clarification, I'm looking at the resolution on item E, or item D, that is. So 100% of the net revenue from any fees and/or charges have to go back to public activities, special events, economic development projects, or community betterment. Where does it say that it has to be in the city of Des Moines?
Yeah, so I'm looking at that. So we've always interpreted that as 100% into city activities. And maybe that's the community betterment projects.
Well, looking at the resolution on, this is on page 71 of our packet, it says, permission to reduce the facilities rates to organizations serving Des Moines. So I'm just wondering where it says it has to be 100% of the proceeds serve Des Moines or a portion of it serve Des Moines. Because it seems to me that if you had a fundraiser for Highline Schools serves Des Moines, but it serves other municipalities as well. So I'm just looking for where it clarifies that 100% need to go to services that only are within the city.
Yeah, and so I think there's a little bit of clarity in the subsection 2 where it provides a 50% reduction and then talks about 60% of their net revenues, and it provides a further list there. So if if the resolution isn't absolutely clear, I believe that that relates to 60%. And then those same provisions would apply to the 100%. So,
Do we know if 60% of the net revenues go towards Des Moines services or betterment?
yeah, I believe so, but the issue with that one, so generally they would have qualified for the 50% reduction, but if you see a little bit further down in that subsection C, the council carved out weekends during the peak periods, which would be April through October. So I don't think that there's a dispute even with Rotary, and we've talked to Brian about where Rotary falls on the council rental rate reduction policy. And that it's at the 20%. And they're actually named in the resolution as falling under that 20% or 50% based on the time of year. So really, that's why we brought this to council, is because staff is bound by the council policy. The council is not bound by it. The council wrote this and can override it. So the request is to override it, and that's where we're at right now.
Well, I guess my question is more about the interpretation of the policy then. And it seems like part of it says 50% and part of it says 60%.
Yes, it's a 50% discount if the nonprofit provides proof that they return 60%.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably a finance person wrote this.
And I'm sorry, where in the resolution does it carve out the time of year?
So that only applies in the 50% reduction. So it's in 2C, and it's about midway down. It says this policy would not apply to weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday facility use during the months of April through October. During those times, a 20% fee reduction would apply. And then just in the next paragraph, it says examples of users in this category: Des Moines Rotary Club fundraising activities, PTSA, school fundraising, all that. So,
Yeah, it does seem to me that some of these have been interpreted in Section 2 to be applied to Section 3, but some of the parts of 2 are not being applied to Section 3, which leads to some confusion about whether or not nonprofits would qualify for either the 50% or the 75% reduction. It looks like there could be some further clarification on why is it that you get a 50% or why is it that you get a 75%?
yeah, so certainly the council could look at rewriting their policy on this.
Okay.
So to go back to the original discussion that we're having, but to close that part of the discussion, if that was going to be made, a recommendation was going to be made to review this policy, when would we do that? Right here, would we do this after the motion, wait until new agenda item for consideration? When would that? Right.
To me, it would be a new agenda item for consideration.
Okay, so we will,
We're still on question phase.
we are. So, any more questions? Councilmember Grace Matsui, I want to make sure that you get to ask all of them that you want.
I think that is all that I have.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, so we do have a sample motion here. Do I have a motion? Okay, question, thank you.
What in the past has typically Rotary received as a rate reduction?
So generally, they have not made this request. I believe that historically it's been 20%. Last year we had some issue, there was a mistake. We gave them the 75% off inadvertently last year. And that was not brought to council, that was a mistake at our staffing level. And we obviously didn't request them to pay after the fact. So they I think that's part of the reason why there was a statement about why did the price go up? Because we charged them less last year on accident. And so this year was with the correct price. It's the bill that was sent. The council obviously gets to make a decision here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I want to make sure that I see all your hands. So, okay, do I have a motion? Councilmember Nutting?
I move to approve a rate reduction in the amount of 40% for the 2024 Poverty Bay Blues and Brews Festival.
Do I have a second? Deputy Mayor Steinmetz. I have a second. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz. Open for discussion on motion number 1. Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so I got 3 things. Basically, I'm cool with any requests, I understand the organization is obviously worthy and they address, issues on a planetary level and so forth. My concern is that we do not have a consistent policy. And whenever I hear these kinds of discussions, it reminds me of Schedule C, 165, line 32A, and I can't stand it. You need to have something simple that is equitable for all organizations. But, great, there's been a misunderstanding. But next year, let's have something that's like, 1 paragraph and acknowledge the worthiness of all organizations. I would also say, going back to my constant niggle about the unquantifiable benefit, I would support the notion of every organization bringing forward some form of at least first-order revenue potential for these events. If we're really trying to get to a point where we think about, drawing people to the area for various purposes, we should be gathering some sort of understanding of how much money these things do take in or how many visitors we have. People should bring that to the table when they make a proposal. I think that's reasonable. And I would also like to hope, since our new accounting system has project codes and all the staff members enter their time stuff, it would be nice if we could get closer to a real-time assessment of what our actual costs are on every event. I always cringe because, our staff taking hours gathering that kind of information after each event. We have to get to where we can have a good idea of what the impact is going to be of every event as quickly as possible. This is all information gathering for us, and but as far as the discount for this year, I guess this will sound perhaps crass, but go forth and sin no more, and whatever the council suggests, I will support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Grace Matsui.
Thank you. I think that some of those are stated in Brian Snur's letter about the number of participants that come in and the revenue potentially that could go to worthy causes in our area. While I do believe that it's important that we have a reduction, I think that to me, this resolution is unclear. And if we can update it in the future, that would be great. I would love to see that on a future agenda item. I do think the way that it's written, it seems like there would be very few people who would qualify for the 75% reduction. And to limit nonprofits to only getting 50 on the basis of where the money goes to, if one person in Burien gets $1, then they don't get that discount, seems rather arbitrary to me. I would support a higher discount. I think that if you're looking at an increase in fees, $6,000 is more than 10% of the revenue that goes to these very worthy charities. And so while I think 40% is generous, I would love to see an increased amount. I don't know if anyone has an appetite for that.
Is that Is that all? Are you? Okay, thank you. I'll go with Councilmember Mahoney, and then Councilmember Nutting, and then Deputy Mayor Steinmetz. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Mahoney.
The years living in this community, I've seen the good work Rotary's done, and I commend you all. It's been fantastic. And I know you spend your dollars in the community, and you were effective in distributing that to several organizations, so I have no issue there. I will say this, there are challenges. We've challenged our Parks and Recreation Department to be at least break even, which is a difficult process. So giving away money is kind of contrary to the direction we've given them. The other thing is flat out, we have a levy in the process, and we have a financial situation. And this is an example of if the levy were to fail, we might have to make choices on here and actually look at the policy altogether and decide whether we're gonna give any discount at all. But I also understand the value you bring to the community. You bring lots of visitors into the community. They get to expose here, and maybe they may not do business that day, but they're reminded that we live on the seaside, and the hope is that they come back again and enjoy it. I also would say something that I think might have been missed all of this time is that the city, I don't believe, has ever been an official sponsor. And I would say whatever discount we decide tonight, that be part of the things that you could do for us. I am in full support of a 75% discount. I'm not going to support a 40%. I think that you guys do the good work, and I think your intent is there. But like I said, this is this year, and under our special situations, I have to weigh those things. And I am fearful that should we have to make tough decisions in the future, this type of request we couldn't even entertain. So I just want to say that in this, and that's my comments.
All right. Councilmember Nutting.
For all the reasons that Councilmember Mahoney stated about Rotary and what they do, that is the reason why I made the motion that I did is in years past, it's been a 20% reduction in fees. And there's no way to make Rotary bear the burden of the mistake that was made last year all in 1 year. And so in my mind, 40% reduction in fees is a compromise where we bear the burden of the mistake that was made. You bear a little bit of the burden that this mistake was made, and we move forward knowing that in years to come, there's a good possibility that 20% is all that the city's going to be able to move forward with. So that is the reason why I made the motion I did. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that Rotary does, and I love the Blues and Brews Festival. It's a great time. It's been one of my favorite events in Des Moines for a long, long time. But I also, I'm torn because I think we have a policy, a certain amount of disclarity in that policy. I will agree with several of the questions that were asked or clarifications that were sought by Councilmember Grace Matsui. And we're looking at pretty tough times. This is prime time for the city to be renting out facilities. There could easily have been a couple of weddings there that would have potentially brought in a lot more revenue. But I like Blues and Brews, and I'd like to support it, and I want to see it happen. It's unfortunate what happened last year. It's not a question of trying to make it up, but it is a recognition, I think, and the reason I think I'm going to support the 40% is that we're having tough times, but there's been some disclarity. You guys got a great deal last year. We're not trying to make it up at this point, but we want to make sure that the show does go on, and we want to make sure that it works for everyone. And I appreciate everything you do for the community, but I think that Councilmember Nutting has come up with a good compromise position, and so I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris and then Councilmember Grace Matsui.
I just have, one other thing. The application actually has more information than a lot of the applications I've seen. I'm just looking for consistency. And one other thing, we're talking strictly in terms of cost, and there's that unquantifiable deal. I'll just note that about 40% of the reason I moved here was for the fabulously low fuel cost at the marina. That was an intentional strategy, supposedly, to be the economic driver for many years. It didn't necessarily turn out that way when only 22% of the residents or whatever, or the people at the marina are residents, but it worked for me. My point is that somehow these events really need to draw more people. Somehow we need to be able to promote them and really be more of that magnet thing. So, regardless of what discount you provide, you really want to find out, rather than just being aspirational, how would you make this event that's heavily discounted bring in 2x more people to the event? If you're just saying this is basically all the people you're ever going to get, then yeah, you have to limit your discounts. But is there some way that we can market and promote these things such that we can afford to be somewhat more generous? Because the whole deal should be to try to actively attract more people to these events. The city should find ways to leverage this. That's beyond this discussion, but that really should be the thing, not just cutting costs, but actually drawing more people to the events. And we never seem to get around to those discussions. We leave it to the organizations themselves to do the heavy lifting. And I just would say, no, I mean this, I'm trying to be supportive. You cannot expect the organizations themselves to do that heavy lifting and move the needle to where we want to get to. Okay, I'm done.
I think it was Councilmember Grace Matsui next, and then Councilmember Mahoney.
I think there's a couple of differences in perspective here, and I want to highlight my own thinking about it. One is, I don't believe that parks and recreation are meant to be money generating, revenue generating. It's nice if they are, but I believe the purpose of open parks is for people to use them. And if we cannot give a discount to our own nonprofits at a level that is reasonable, we will price them out because someone will always be able to pay more at a market level. And so it goes back to a philosophy of who is got the better right to use our public facilities. And I would argue that a festival that is put on by a nonprofit that gives money into our community has a higher level of responsibility. We have a higher level of responsibility to them as a city than to a private citizen who wants to have a party. If we continue to use the beach park as only a revenue-generating place, it will become a private park rather than a public park. And so I would urge folks to think about how we can throw the door open on more of our public facilities so that they're used more rather than less. I also believe that it's important to note that this money comes back just the same way that ferry passengers hopefully would come back. That if we entice folks to come to Des Moines one time, they might think of it again, to come down here to go to the farmer's market, to come down here to visit a restaurant, to go to look for a place to live, possibly. And so that untangible benefit exists for this event just the same as any other tourist activity that we have here. And so I'm a bit disappointed that we can't bargain with a little bit more, over $6,000, but we can dedicate $500,000 to something that also has a very untangible benefit. So I think the priority here is a bit backwards from my perspective. I would love to see an amended motion, and if I need to make one, I will, for a 75% reduction. And the chips will fall where they may with a vote. But public parks are meant to be publicly used. And I think that we can absorb the $6,000 to $7,000. That's in salary savings that we'll make in August, which is just about let's say a week's worth of pay for a former city manager. But it's 12% of the overall proceeds of this organization for the entire year for this event. And so which one is more impactful and more meaningful?
Councilmember Mahoney.
I agree with Councilmember Grace Matsui in most of what you said. I think community there's a value in community over cost. And that's why I support the 75% as well. The other thing I will say is that in the municipal facilities meeting, we got an excellent presentation from Bonnie Wilkins about other efforts of how they're trying to expand some of the other resources to make money. The truth is, but the reality in today's effort is there's many events and a lot of days where the beach park has great access to the residents to use. But we do need to offset some of the losses. So there's a balance there is what I'm trying to say. But in this particular place, I believe the greater good of the community warrants it. To Councilmember Harris's point, I think Rotary's done an excellent job of promoting this event, and I've attended them. And as I believe the last several years have been completely sold out, it's a capacity issue. And the problem is trying to enlarge to a greater place that is of a spectacular venue, I don't think is necessarily an option. You're starting to end up in parking lots and things like that, where being on the grass and the comfortability and being able to see the performance and enjoy the beauty and the sereneness, which many people get to enjoy for free at the concerts in the park in the summer. So it's being done, and as far as the city assisting them, obviously the discount and some of the things that the staff do. The other thing you brought up earlier that I wanted to point out is we did ask Bonnie and her team to come up with the real costs, how much labor was really going to be involved to put the event on. So those kind of things. So we got a complete picture of what the events will be, so we have a better picture in the future. But if this motion fails, or if we have a friendly amendment to 75%, I'm definitely going to support it.
Did I see another hand? Councilmember Nutting.
I just want to make a point of clarification, is that we didn't ask Parks and Rec to become net zero or to pay for what they're doing. We directed events and facilities to bring their expenditures within reason. And so we're not talking about Parks and Rec here. We're talking about a facilities rental. So it's not an open free space. It's a facilities rental.
Yeah. And my mistake. That was my intent, but used the wrong word. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Oxiger.
I think what the Rotary does is it's unique, and that's what we need in order to attract people to the cities. We need unique events. I think the fact that the amount of money they put back into the community is going to be enhanced by the fact that they've got lower costs. It enables them to put more back into the community. There's no guarantee on that, but I think having witnessed Rotary's intent over the years, that's definitely what it is. Nobody else doing it. I will move to amend that we increase the level to 75%.
If you have a second, but the original person who.
I don't accept that. I made the motion. We've got a motion on the table
Point
and
of
it has to
order.
be voted on.
Point of order.
Motion to amend. If there's a second, then there's a vote
On the amendment. So
to
do you have,
accept the amendment.
do you have a second to the motion?
Yes, I second the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion on that amendment?
To accept the amendment.
Well, don't you have to allow discussion? Okay, that's what I'm, so, no comments on that? So, all in favor of the amendment to this motion to
Well,
make?
wait, can we have the discussion? Or
I
did
just
hear-
asked and
Oh,
you
I'm
didn't
sorry,
raise your
I'm sorry,
hand.
you hit the wrong-
Okay,
hit the wrong-
sorry. Go ahead, if you've got a comment on that, Councilmember Harris, go ahead.
I don't know how to word this, but I would like to amend this that we not guarantee a 75% discount next year, because what we've done is we're creating a precedent.
That is a different discussion under new agenda items for consideration. We talked about that earlier, and I think the committee
Okay.
has already had that, started that conversation, but that will come forward in another part of the agenda. Yes, sir. Councilmember Oxiger.
Yeah.
Your name is not sir.
I will accept Councilmember Harris's caveat.
No, that's another part of the agenda tonight. We will be discussing that under new items for consideration. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, did you raise your hand?
No.
No. Okay. So just as an update of where we are, there is a motion and a second to amend the amount to 75% for the 2024 Poverty Bay Blues and Brews Festival. If there's no more discussion or comments, all in favor of raising the discount to 75%, raise your right hand. Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Grace Matsui, Councilmember Mahoney, and Councilmember Harris. All opposed? Councilmember Nunning, abstain. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz and myself. So we got that? All right, so by majority, it is now the discount, the motion is now, I move to approve the rate reduction in the amount of 75% for the 2024 Poverty Bay Blues and Brews Festival. That is what's on the table. Any more discussion or comments on the 75%? Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I'm going to oppose this. 75% is just way too much. We do have a current plan or policy. They clearly do not meet that policy. That was by their own admission. I believe, if I understood the city manager in the conversation that was related to us, I think we need to amend that policy to make it clear. But 75% discount on an otherwise revenue-generating weekend is effectively a huge gift to Rotary. And if another organization comes in, shouldn't we treat them the same? Give them another huge gift? It's a transfer. It's revenue that we are giving up, which amounts to something that doesn't come into the city coffers, and it's just too much. I'm willing to support some, but I cannot support 75%.
Councilmember Harris.
The only reason I went for 75% is because we have been all over the map on these things over the years. It's just a fact. And so I said what I said before, just whatever on this thing, but please, we created an expectation over the years that we could deal with these things in an ad hoc fashion. And, and the only reason I'm going for this is because I'm never going for it again. But your point is well taken.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll add mine. Rotarians are successful business people, and they expect the same from their electeds. And we're working diligently to create appropriate and sustainable revenue streams in the city of Des Moines in answer to an outcry from our public. And daily comments, we're going out for a levy, and we're constantly being held to account for what we do with the revenue streams in the city. And we are very limited. We don't have a mall. We don't have hotels. We don't have an airport. We don't have huge parking garages. And we are constrained in our footprint by undevelopable lands anymore. Really, we can only redevelop in the city of Des Moines, basically. And so we have very few revenue streams that we can rely on. And so we're digging in the weeds here. Our finance committee is working like crazy to try and find out what can we do. We want our events and facilities to thrive into an enterprise. And it's, you know, and it can, I've flipped properties for 40 years, and I love rent. Rents and leases provide a built-in hedge against inflation, better than property tax, because over the long haul, even, this is a fantastic thing that we're asking for, in my opinion, here coming up in August. But rents and leases, they can always keep up with inflation, just like sales tax can keep up with inflation, and invisibly. People don't know that they're paying rising taxes all the time without a decision of their council, because they're going to the store and they're paying more for milk, and you're paying more for your hotel room. The city of Des Moines doesn't have that kind of option. We're a small city, and we're trying hard. And so rents and leases are more structural than most revenues, and we have control over that. And so it's super important in my mind, as we're moving forward as a city, where I love revenue generating capital. That's my favorite revenue, because you've got control over it and it stays up with things. Anyway, that's why I love events and facilities, and everywhere we have buildings and the capability of creating a revenue stream, this city should be looking at it, because like I said, we don't have hotels and malls. I generally feel like we should hold to the policy we just made only a few years ago, and even if it's unclear, and I agree, maybe it's tedious and unclear, but I was sitting over there somewhere, maybe right here at the dais, when we revisited this only a handful of years ago. So that council, and some of us sitting here, made this decision, and it was understood the decision we were trying to make. That said, okay, nonprofits bring an extreme value back into the community. I love Rotary, and especially this event, because it's not just for the revenue it generates and pours back into the community, but it's fulfilling this destination vibe, this thing that we want to bring back into the city. It's creating an incredible regional destination event. It's what our citizens want and love. So I'm personally in favor of a compromise, and I loved the 40, but that's not on the table anymore. And so, we do have one more motion, and I think I'm going to use that. So right now, I know where I'm going to go with my vote. So without further ado, I'm going to ask, this is for the 75% discount. Oh, wait a minute. I apologize. I want to offer another friendly amendment. I would like it to say, I move to approve the rate reduction in the amount of 75% for the 2024 Poverty Bay Blues and Brews Festival, and that they would recognize the city of Des Moines visibly as a sponsor. Do I have a second? I have a second. Is this a friendly, or? This is.
Well, there's no such thing.
We're just calling in lieu of them recognizing us as a visible sponsor for the event. I have a second, and Councilmember Grace Metsui. And so with that amendment, all in favor of that amendment to be recognized as a formal, pardon? That's what I'm doing right now. To recognize, this is the vote to add to this 75%, and that we are recognized visibly as a sponsor for the event.
May I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So this is contingent on their acceptance of that,
Part of the.
Yeah, that basically we will only give them the discount if they agree that we are a sponsor, and why wouldn't they?
Well, they have to agree to anything that we say, what I'm saying, meaning, no matter what we decide here, they're still gonna have to make a decision to accept it, no matter what it is that we.
That we're this.
They're not, Oh, they're not part of it, so,
We're an official sponsor
Okay.
of their thing. That's
yes.
what you're saying. you're
So
proposing.
now we're voting on
Okay.
the official sponsor part of the motion. All in favor, raise your right hand. It looks like it's unanimous, 7-0. So now we are voting on the entire motion. 75% with recognition of Des Moines as an official visible sponsor. Ready? Deep breath. All in favor, raise your right hand. I have Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Grace Matsui, Councilmember Mahoney, Councilmember Harris, and myself, all opposed, Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, and Councilmember Nutting. So motion number 1 passes. Now we are on motion number 2 in regard to parking fees. Do I have a motion? Somebody like to? I don't have a motion. So it looks like parking fees will not be waived. And motion number 1 passes. Okay. Now, I think I have totally conducted this, this item. Are we good, City Manager?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Now, moving on to new agenda items for consideration. Several people have, I do want to say that in Municipal Facilities Committee meeting today, this conversation did come up with regard to another conversation or more clarity to this whole situation. So I'm going to open the dais to anybody who would like to make a recommendation about new agenda items for consideration. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I move that we refer the previous resolution number 1289, which is the policy we've been talking about for the discounts, and refer that to the Municipal Facilities Committee to draft, update, clarify the language on that, and so it's clearer, more equitable, and appropriate.
Okay, do I have some head nods? It looks like I'm all very much in favor. Looks like we've got that. So, and Municipal Facility Chair, how do you feel about that? We bring that to your,
I got a comment on both.
Okay.
I actually think it needs to be in municipal facilities and ACON
okay?
as well. And as the chair of both of those, I'll accept that.
All right. So we're good with that? Moving that forward? All right, any other offerings for new agenda items for consideration tonight? Okay, a conversation on that. Great. Okay, next on the agenda is councilmember reports, and first up is Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Oxiger.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a little awkward because my understanding is that Councilmember Harris is going to elaborate on what I'm about to say, and I do not mean to step on his comments, but recently we've had a loss in the community of Kayleen Moon, who served for a long time on the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. And I also served with her on the Des Moines Legacy Board, Foundation Board. And I would, to me, you know, was totally, you know, distraught when I heard that Kayleen had passed. There are a few people in this community that I think have exemplified what I think is the meaning of leave the place better than it was when you got here. And that very much was Kayleen, and I took great inspiration from that. And I will comment that at our last board meeting, Kayleen's compassion for those in need in our community, I think was second to none. And we were actually having a discussion, it had come before the foundation, a question of of whether or not we could help, a certain person in a certain situation. And the problem is that some of the board felt that it was outside of our purview, outside of the constraints that we have on making the donation. And eventually it prevailed that we did have to deny the request. But I will say that Kayleen argued vociferously on the value of compassion and the value of looking out for our fellow citizens. So I'm going to miss her greatly, and I'll leave the rest of the comment to Councilmember Harris, but that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Harris.
I have very little to add to what Councilmember Oxiger had to say, except that every city needs people like Kayleen Moon. Most of us will go to the mat for our family, someone on our street. Some of us run for city council or various boards. Kayleen was more of like what I call a utility player. She was the kind of person who just got engaged in hundreds of things to help people over the decades. She was just energetic and optimistic. I saw her 2 days before her passing, and her absence is unthinkable to me. And she is the kind of person that the Spirit Awards thing was basically invented for. And I'll just close by saying that I hope everyone will join me in celebrating her life at St. Columba's Episcopal Church in Kent on July the 16th at 1 p.m. I'm sure there will be people who can articulate her value far better than I could. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind everybody, because we'll only have an executive session on July 2nd, that to have a safe July 4th, I remind everybody that fireworks are illegal in the city. But everybody, please drink responsibly and be safe, and please don't violate our laws. The police have enough to do to, we've changed some ordinance to make the penalty a little stiffer, and I think they're eager to share that with those that violate it, but I just choose that they prefer to abstain from that, and we're all good. I also want to, in that 4th of July, I want to thank City Manager George, and I know that Scott and Bonnie and several others in your leadership group and several of the employees will be working tirelessly during those days. So I'm going to thank you in advance. I know you've done a lot of preparation and things like that, and a lot goes into that gets unappreciated, and I just want to call that out today. The other thing I'm just going to mention is, bang, 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 do we have a lot of events? I know we've got music coming in the park. I think the first date is this July 17th. Also, for the parade that's going to happen on July 20th, the Waterland weekend, we still need volunteers. We had a church join on, which was really nice. They had about 12 or 15 people. We could use a few more boats. I need 2 more boats. So Scott, I might hit you up to see if we can twist somebody's arm. And then, of course, as always, entries. If you're a business in the community or represent a particular group or something, we would love to see you in the parade to represent it. We've had a few of the dance teams and some things come back from hiatuses for a few years, which is good. So there's some promising things, but we can always use more, and what we want to see is a reflection of our community. And so we strive to that. And those are accessible on the Destination Des Moines website, where you can do an entry or a volunteership, or, like I said, contact me about a boat. Anyway, looking forward to that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank At least you don't need to be contacted about a horse, right? All right, Councilmember Grace Matsui.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say what a lovely weekend of activities we had last weekend, which included the Men in Black Birthday Bash, our Waterland Pride Festival. I also stumbled across Goth Fly a Kite, or Go Fly a Kite, in the beach park on Saturday, which just brought a very interesting amount of folks all into one place at one time. And it was a great demonstration of what happens when folks go, make a reservation at a park, and then wander through and shop at the farmer's market, which I believe
Was
is
the O
really...
and the T too close together?
The O and the T.
You said goth?
It is goth. It was goth
I thought it was-
Fly a Kite.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was for people in the goth community. Yeah. So it which made them very noticeable when they walked through the farmer's market, so I could see that they had attendance at their event, which I think allows for that folks to come through, enjoy other places in our park. And so I had a chance to thank a few of them for choosing Des Moines as their gathering spot for that Saturday. And I hope you have a chance to come to the farmer's market. One of these Saturdays we have new vendors coming in each week. Some are only going to be there every other week. And then we have folks who fill in those times. And so if you haven't been in a while, there may be new vendors that you haven't met before that I would encourage you to stop and come by. I know we had some conversations earlier today about the comprehensive plan, and we talked a little bit about how the ADUs and the middle housing might impact growth in the city. And I'll try to go back to and remember that growth should pay for growth. So, right, so when folks go in and do permitting for a new development, or they want to do another utility hookup, that person, the developer, is responsible to pay for the growth that happens. And so it isn't up to the city necessarily to say that growth needs to be paid for. It's up to the folks who want to build and join up to a utility system. So that is something that will not change with the zoning. It's just how many more permitted occupancies there could be in the city. And I want to echo Councilmember Mahoney. Please have a safe and wonderful 4th of July. I hope to see you down at the beach park at 10:19, I believe, to make sure that we see all these drones. Thank you.
Unless you're a council member, you have to be there earlier. Just a reminder. Councilmember, let's see, Councilmember Nutting. Let's see. How did we do that? Oh, we already went around the circle there. I was just so enthralled with all of you. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Just a couple of things that I want to share my own story of Kayleen Moon, because she really was very there was a young woman in Des Moines that several of us know who got into a really bad domestic situation and just needed to get out of town. And we were able to, put together some funds to help her leave town. And Kayleen got people over at Wesley organized and presented with a fair amount of cash just to help do that. That's what kind of lady she was. And it's really just a wonderful thing. And she will be missed. Last night, in talking to several citizens, we had a discussion about crime statistics in particular that were questioned. Found out that the Police Advisory Board had just released what they normally release to what the department releases. And so we're going to try to get those up so that people can see and answer some of the questions about, what's happening with the crime statistics in this town. It was also brought up, though, that, Washington State ranks 51st in the nation in the ratio of police to population, and that includes Des Moines. We're just really low. Lots of good events over the last weekend. The Men in Black Birthday Bash, the Burning Saucer down at the Woodmont Country Club area. Great events. Everybody just had a really wonderful time doing that. The Pride Festival, of course, and the Farmers Market. Ironically, I took my mother, who some of you know, who's 87 and not about to slow down, to the farmer's market because she wants to go. And we started talking to the minister, Jeff, the minister of United Methodist Church, and they used to have a quilting group there. And my mother goes to the Unitarian Church locally, and there used to be a quilting group there, and now they're just not. And they started talking, and so we were going to try to get a quilting group going. So if there's anybody interested in doing quilting, which apparently has a pretty big following, we have a quilt store in town. Just thought I'd pass that on, and call the United Methodist Church and ask them about their quilting group. So. 4th of July is coming up. I wish everybody have a safe and happy 4th. You've heard from everybody, fireworks are illegal, and it's going to get enforced as best we can with the numbers of police officers that we have available to us to try to get, enforce the ordinance, the new ordinance that we passed. So I hope it's quieter and saner for most people. So I'm looking forward to it, and I will see everybody there at 10 o'clock. Actually, I'll be down there earlier, but council members have to be there by 10 so we can get to where we're supposed to be before things go. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, a lot of fun things coming up. Looking forward. I also heard there's some music down in Redondo, some evenings coming up. I hope some of you can catch some of that. And music in the park coming. A lot of fun things this summer. I also want to thank the staff for preparing an amazing thing coming up for us here on the 4th of July. So, touche. Appreciate that. I was involved in I just want to report out a regional ferry discussion that was hosted by Puget Sound Regional Council. So elected leaders from all over the Puget Sound region talking about ferries, federal funding, state funding, electric ferries, passenger ferries. There's just lots of activity around the ferry discussion all around the region. And so I just wanted to bring up, I'm excited that we're continuing to just make sure we're poised for whatever kind of resource comes down the pike, right? So we're not going to invest a whole lot like we did before. We are looking for partners and we're looking for funding, and I'm excited that we're just making sure that we're in the conversation and ready when somebody wants to give us some money. So also, I attended this grand opening. It's kind of an obscure little thing, a grand opening of a 7-Eleven on 260th and Pack Highway. That is the nicest looking 7-Eleven I have ever been in. If you guys walk in there, you go, I mean, beautiful tile, beautiful display, friendly owners. Those people are so friendly. So I just encourage you, just pop on in, 260th and Pack Highway, brand new store, reopened. I also am going to miss Kayleen Moon. I served with her on Senior Services Advisory. She was just so spicy, and I love a spicy woman, and going to miss her. Maybe just in closing, maybe because this is how I felt this week. If you're feeling a little old, just remember the cheapest, quickest, and easiest facelift is a smile. This concludes our meeting this evening. Next meeting will be July 2nd, 2024, City Council Executive Session next week for us. Please remember to pick up after yourself on your way out. And looking for a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Nutting. Do I have a second? I'm going to give that to Councilmember Mahoney because he moved to adjourn also. It's on the second. We're adjourned.